Collision, a podcast about Marvel, the MCU, and right now, Marvel Zombies. Blah! That's what they say.
Really good.
You're doing like a Dracula voice.
I'm Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And in case you couldn't figure it out, we're going to be talking about all 4 episodes of the animated series Marvel Zombies, which is on Disney Plus right now. If you haven't watched them, get out of here. We're going to spoil the whole thing and delve into it. But just like Eyes of Wakanda, 4 episodes dropping all at the same time. That's the entire series. That's the entire season. Maybe there'll be a season 2 down the road, but let's be honest, probably not. And it is spinning off of, in case you forgot, an episode of What If titled What If Zombies that came in the first season of that show all the way back in 2021. We do eventually loop back to that in this series, but to give you the broadest of broad overviews here, and then we'll talk about kind of our own broad feelings about the series, as well as specifics, things we like, things that we could have room for improvement, if you will, to frame it positively. Back in the What If episode, we were introduced to a riff on Ant-Man and the Wasp, where Hank Pym went down to the quantum realm to save his wife and accidentally brought back a zombie virus instead that took over the entire MCU, or this variant of the MCU, around the time at the beginning of Infinity War. So we followed a bunch of heroes who were trying to fight to save the world. They thought they found a zombie cure courtesy of the Vision, and they kind of did, thanks to the Mind Stone, which did cure at least Scott Lang's severed head, which was flying around thanks to Doctor Strange's levitation cloak. But it turned out the Vision was actually feeding pieces of Black Panther to Scarlet Witch, who had been zombified. He relented, gave them the Mind Stone. Hulk went head-to-head with Scarlet Witch, and Spider-Man, Black Panther, and the head of Scott Lang escaped to Wakanda to try and save the world, not realizing that zombie Thanos was there waiting to collect the zombie Infinity Stones for the zombie Infinity Gauntlet. Now, like I said, we eventually loop back there, I believe, in the 3rd episode here, and what we find out is there was a big showdown with zombie Thanos. Ultimately, Black Panther sacrificed his life to save the entire universe, probably, causing something called the Wakanda event, a infinity energy that was absorbed by the Hulk, thanks to the mystics of Kamar-Taj, and they've tried to prevent the Scarlet Witch, who is called the Red Queen here on the show, from getting that energy, finding out about it, and absorbing it herself. Looping back to the beginning of the series, though, we focus on Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, who is leading a relatively pleasant existence with Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and also Riri Williams, Ironheart, but they find out about a mysterious signal that they think can actually bring some help to save the world. Turns out later on that is the Nova Corps, but over the course of the journey, Kamala gains a bunch of allies, loses a bunch of allies, finds out that the Nova Corps actually is already there, quarantining the Earth. Real bummer, but it leads to a final confrontation between Kamala and Scarlet Witch, who has been giving her nightmares to lead her at the point where ultimately she could use her power to absorb the Hulk's infinity power and remake the world. And then we get a classic, like, Twilight Zone twist there at the end, where it seems like the world was saved, but of course, it wasn't actually at all. So again, very broad overview of the 4 episodes. We get to see a lot of MCU folks. We also get to hear a lot of voices that are not MCU folks because they didn't come back on at least one bizarre debut in the form of Blade Knight, who is Blade, but also Moon Knight, but also not Mahershala Ali, because even though we've been waiting since 2019, he wasn't available for this project. So,
does he even want to be Blade? Come on.
I mean, come on. Come on, Mahershala. You listen to this podcast. Anyway,
I will say he probably didn't want to debut his Blade in this.
Yes, well, he did debut his Blade voice in the end credits of Eternals, which we all know and remember. Yep. So he's already done voice work for the part.
Just think, that felt important then. It's only now we realize it's not.
Yes. In any case, that is the broad overview without spending too much time talking about what Mahershala Ali did or didn't do. Let's talk about the series. Much belated, like a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about with the MCU lately. Ironheart was delayed. Eyes of Wakanda was delayed and jumped around the schedule. Marvel Zombies was announced, I believe, in 2021. So we've been waiting for that for a good long while. How do you feel about this now that this is finally out in the world?
Well, I was having fun up until the end. I thought it was like, I thought it had some fun moments, some cool mix up of characters. There was just some cute, kind of adorable, fun moments, and I was having a blast kind of along the way with each episode. And then the last episode, I was like, well, what the fuck? Well, why did we go through all that if you're just gonna? But why would you do that to me? I spent all this time, and then
you felt betrayed.
I have some bad news for you about how life works in general.
Yeah, I mean, life's already hard enough. I don't need to go to Marvel to remind me. You know, it used to be a nice escape, but now.
But you want Marvel to make your life better, you're saying?
It would be nice. They have been doing it up until this point pretty well on a consistent basis.
You've been prescribed the MCU pretty correctly, right?
Yeah, by many doctors. And,
take two comics and call you in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
something that keeps me sane and not saying something. But I do think
I have a couple notes on the last 5 minutes of your talk.
There was also like Infinite Hulk was badass. You know, there was some cool fight scene moments that were great. It was some fun kind of versus moments. You know, the zombie Thor versus Infinite Hulk was fun. There was some cool shit, but I was really surprised at the way it ended. Also, you know, like they weren't giving us the Marvel flip at the beginning. That's always a sign that things aren't going to go well, you know. So, yeah, I was a little disappointed.
It was a blood flip. It was just the logo with some blood on it.
Well, in the first one, you just got kind of zombie noises, not enough blood, and then you got more blood with each episode, it seemed like. So it was interesting.
Do you think the logo designer got their nosebleed fixed?
I hope so.
You think it was actually he was bleeding from his nose down?
Yeah, it seemed like Marvel was beating the animators as they were like, "Crank this out! What the fuck? We need this like yesterday."
They need a union. Yeah. Justin, how are you feeling about this?
Yeah, Justin.
I liked it as well. I think there are a couple things that I definitely feel like weren't maybe as good as I wanted them to be, but I actually liked the end. It had that sort of zombie movie ending where it's like, hey, you thought you made it out, but you actually didn't at all. And I like that it flashed back to a moment where truly she's still in the beginning of the story. If the whole series essentially was a vision from Wanda Maximoff in the middle of that first battle, then they could still have a chance. They could still get out there and save the day.
So you're saying there's a chance is what you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not interpret it that way at all. So you took it as like they were still there when Riri was alive and they were fighting.
Well, it flashes to her being yelled at by Kamala Khan being yelled at by, I think it's Riri or
it's
Kate,
Riri.
I don't know.
Riri.
And she's like,
wake up,
pay attention. Yeah. We have to fight.
Fake.
So that's where I feel like that's all that vision from that time, and she just needs to get back in the fight, and maybe she can save all of her friends, because the overarching sort of idea here is like, let's make these sacrifices worthwhile. And I feel like that's paid off in the best way, in that she could go back and actually make the sacrifices of the vision worthwhile.
This is I'm just going to throw it out there, Pete, say what you want to say, but this is going to be a very pessimist, optimist, glass half full, glass half empty type look at the end of this show. Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to follow up. So, Justin, just so I'm understanding what you're saying, and you know, I very much value your opinion, and
this is a big setup. Are you about to bite my neck?
Well, no, I'm just saying that, like, so basically, you got to the end after all that, and then you realized, oh, it's still just the beginning. You were like, oh, fun! I like when people waste my time.
It's not wasting time. It was a cool story.
No, but that's why I wanted to dissect a little bit. Like, what part was cool? The fact that, like, we went through all. Yeah, twist. You're still at the beginning. You wasted 2 hours of your life.
So let me get this straight. To take the biggest twist of all that everybody knows, I See Dead People. Are you get to the end of that movie? You're like, why didn't you tell me that in the beginning, you assholes?
No, that's different. That's a very different
thing. I've
not.
known Pete for a little while now. Pete judges things, and I'm not saying this dismissively, Pete, based wholly on how they end. Like, that is the only thing that you really judge things on, ultimately, because that affects your entire experience going forward.
Yes, agree.
And I would suggest to you what Justin is saying is, like Tony Stark said before us, part of the journey is the end, not the entire journey is the end.
Savor every bite. Pete, eats a big pile of dog shit, but as long as it's caviar in the last bite, he's like, yum, yum.
Wow, that seems insane.
Yeah, all I'm saying, I do look at things in a similar way where, yes, the ending, of course, is something that is going to affect the viewing experience, but I don't think you can judge something based only on the last 2 to 3 minutes of the thing, particularly when you're talking about multiple episodes. Like, I think if we're talking about if it was one episode and it was all leading up to that twist and it was all based on that, sure, maybe you can judge it on that. But this twist is just the last thing that happens over the course of the 4 episodes. And ultimately, if you enjoyed all of that, I don't think that ending really affects it. It's almost its own bit. It's its way of being like, this sounds dumb, but like, this is how we are ending it. We are making this decision and going forward.
I would argue, and I don't mean to get too much into the weeds here. I would argue the ending is the most important thing. You know what I mean? You can have a great flight, but if the ending doesn't go well, that great flight does not matter, my friend.
No, I love every bit of the flight. What they crashed. The food was decent. You know?
Well, first off, I'd love to know what you're flying where you think the food is decent.
Yeah, depends on where you're flying.
I've yet to experience that, but I disagree. If the ending, ending is super important. You got to make it worth the time and effort, and when you don't, that's a real slap in the face.
Well, let me throw out what I thought was happening in the ending, and I certainly could be convinced of what you're saying, Justin, because I do think it makes sense logically the way that you're explaining it. But the way that I took it is, and also we should probably discuss the actual 4 episodes and not just the last couple of minutes in a second, sure. But Wanda's plan is to, very sketchy plan, is to lead Kamala to this point because, as we've seen throughout the MCU, when you use the Infinity Stones, it hurts you, usually in some way. It takes something away from you. Tony Stark died in Avengers Endgame. Sure, the Hulk, when he used it, his arm got all withered. Even Thanos, the second time he used them, basically got scarred on half of his body and severely weakened. So I think Wanda, however she knows that, it doesn't really matter, wants to take the Hulk Infinity energy to remake the world, but needs Kamala's powers, her energy powers, to essentially create an armor to protect herself. Sort of like her own Kamala Khan Infinity Gauntlet. And I think Wanda is successful because Kamala gives up her power to her. She agrees to do that because there's nothing left to do. And yeah, no, I disagree with that. All of this thing is, I think Wanda's plan in general is very sketchy and be like, I will give you nightmares to lead to this point. Definitely one of the weaker points of the series as a whole. But just to keep talking about this, so she does remake the world, but she is not magnanimous. She's not helpful. She is a zombie Wanda, despite what she's saying. She's not like, I'm going to make the world so that you and Riri and Kate are hanging out and having boba. Instead, she has created a world with a dreamlike layer over it of everything is fine, so she can keep doing her zombie Red Queen ruling thing without any resistance like she's had before. She can just do it. And I think that matches up to what we saw Wanda do, for example, in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which I think is the exact comp they're going for here, in that scene where she's in the beautiful orchard with Doctor Strange, but it's actually a decrepit, red-tinged, broken down, rotten orchard. And I think that's the same thing happened there. The thing that confuses it is Riri showing up, but we never really saw Riri die in that first episode. We just saw her overwhelmed. So I think the idea there is just like Riri's still around and she's trying to break Kamala out of it, but Kamala is in this dream state with everybody else. So that's how I took it.
Yeah, it's hard to leave Boba and Halal, you know what I mean?
So you think at the end it's just her sitting alone in zombie world?
Or with Kate's corpse or something like that.
Wow, that's bleak, dude.
Yeah, no, I think it's supposed to be a bleak ending, and I think that's shown by like having the jump scare Wanda jump out as us at the end. There is Wanda rules.
Wow, interesting. I feel like so she's not zombified, or she is?
She is.
No, I don't think so, because Riri is yelling at her. Like I get the sense that Riri is in the real world. Like, she is fighting off these zombies. Kamala probably is not zombified as of yet. And she's like, hey, stop out of it. You got to help me. There's still time to fight back against all of this. But everybody else who is left alive, which is probably not a lot of people, certainly not anybody else we've seen in the show, is left in this dream state by Wanda, so they can take them out and zombify them one by one.
All right, let's break it down. Let's go back to the first step.
Pete's done talking about this.
Pete's done, he's got the ending. I don't know. I mean, I think I like the ending. I like my ending because it does.
Okay.
Imagine that. Just because it gives. Because I took the Wanda jump scare at the end is like, she's still out there. She's right there and trying to get them as they maybe have a chance to save the day at the end of the day. Because the only other thing I would say is the whole series has a like dream-like quality to it. You know, the characters that sacrifice themselves do it without much fanfare. They're like, I'm just gonna get out of here. Yelena, I was like, why did she have to go down with this ship? There's no reason she had to stay there. So that's why, and maybe
she couldn't get back to the pod in time. What are you talking about?
She had to just sit there and die. I don't know. It felt unnecessary that she die, except for they're building a pattern of them all sacrificing themselves. I don't know. I guess in general, the reason I like the ending is because it apologizes or fixes some of the weaker parts of the story. And if the whole thing's a vision, then her jumping back gives them a little more hard story to tell, when some of the moves felt a little soft sort of throughout.
Well, I think that comes from, not to call out one particular person, but all 4 episodes were written by Zeb Wells, who, if people don't know, recently had a run on Amazing Spider-Man for a while.
Great writer.
He also worked, is he? You hate Amazing Spider-Man. What are you talking about? Well,
that doesn't mean I hate Zeb Wells. I think he's... Okay. You know, he's done some amazing stuff that I've really loved over the years.
Yeah, he wrote on Robot Chicken. He also, with the Marvel stuff, worked on She-Hulk Attorney at Law. He wrote on the Marvels, and he was one of the co-writers of Deadpool and Wolverine as well. And I think, not to contradict what Pete is saying, he is a comedy guy. And the thing that... To back up what you were saying, Pete, I did really like the action, and I think same as What If, this has really good animated action in particular. Like, that's where that show excelled, and that's where this show excels as well. The action scenes are really clean, they're really good. They definitely amp them up in terms of blood and guts going on here. But where it starts to fall down is like... It really leans into that MCU, we're just all quippy dudes, quip, making a little joke, so that just happened type humor that I'm like...
Yes.
To the point that you're making, Justin, this is a pretty high-stakes situation.
Yeah.
Don't make jokes all the time. Like, occasionally comment on down a little bit.
And the only thing is, it's not the kind of jokes that I like. These are the jokes, like you said, the sort of like, so that just happened. These, like... comments that aren't really speaking. There were a couple things throughout the series that I was like, that was funny. Like the way that Blade was falling when they were falling out of the sky after they were in space. I was like, that's funny.
It is
when
funny.
Valkyrie's like, does this count as dying in battle? Funny. That's a joke. That's a gallows humor joke. But a lot of the like the Mad Max scene at the start of episode 2, I was like, why are they karaokeing this life and death battle against Skrulls? Like, it felt a little like joke-y without being serious, high stakes with comedy elements that are thrown in.
Well, let's get back to the kind of like breakdown of the episodes a little bit here. Let's start with the beginning. I was surprised there's no episode names. You know what I mean? It's just episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. I was like, okay, I'm a little worried about the quality we're getting. We're not getting a flip. We're not getting titles. This
quality, no titles. It's low quality.
Felt like the quality dropped. But Yeah. And
You're always very hard on the animated shows, I feel like, Pete. Why is that?
Well, for animated shows, for me to work, I got to feel like I'm being swept away to a different place and kind of like consumed by what's happening. And if certain things are pulling me out, I'm not enjoying my stay. You know, I'm not all enveloped and the world disappears when you're seeing the kind of holes in the ship and you're like, oh man, that's just paper. It's not really steel. You know, that it's hard to kind of stay in there with it. So when there's things like that you normally get that aren't there, it just seems it's harder to kind of get swept away in it. So we kind of get this fun start where, like, you know, things are light, things are bright. You know, you get it's a zombie apocalypse, but you got a teddy bear operated Iron Man. You know what I mean? So that's fun.
That's a sick Build-A-Bear. You got to really pay off for that Build-A-Bear.
Yeah, that costs extra, bro.
That's a bonus Build-A-Bear. Yeah.
Yeah. That is somebody hit the lottery, and the first thing they did was, you know, how much for a Iron Man Build-A-Bear. So I was like, oh, very interesting. You know,
I do have a question there. Do we think, because I guess the idea here is that Iron Man got beheaded, so they threw a teddy bear on there to make it more chill. Is the corpse still in there? You think?
Probably.
Well, I mean, if you reached into somebody's stomach, you know what I mean, to pull out a little device, I would hope you could empty
your
out
corpse comfortable.
Yeah,
Oh, they
if I
did
remember
empty it out.
correctly, Iron Man was decapitated in the first What If episode, so this was following up on that, and this is Friday, the operating system with the teddy bear head. Just to clarify.
That's what I was thinking. Well, and just while you're talking about that, I feel like this show had such a, like, they remember everything that happened in that What If episode and probably watched it right before this, right? Because watching this, I was like, wait, they didn't even introduce half of these people, and I meant to know exactly who they were. Like, later when we see Spidey and just floating head, I was like, who is that?
Yeah, I was like, wait, is that Ant-Man?
It took me a while, and I was like,
floating
why?
head?
I drink this shit all day. Like, I should know immediately who this is.
Yeah. I do want to put a little pin in that because I don't want to use Pete's term that I believe he invented called "in the weeds." I do want to talk.
Are you a golfer?
Yes, I am. Mini golfer. I do want to talk about like this show's place in the MCU, but Pete, keep walking us through your notes if you like, because I know otherwise you're going to get frustrated.
Well, I think it would be fun to talk through the episodes a little bit before, but if you guys don't want to do that, then that's fine.
No, that's fine. Why don't we like broadly talk about them? So the first one, we're following this trio of Kate, Riri, and Miss Marvel as they go on the journey. They find the Project Life Shot, which is the signal we're talking about. They go through a weird valley where I believe Icarus and Captain Marvel, who is a zombie, are fighting nonstop. Some Kate gets atomized, Riri gets bitten, and Friday takes Kamala on the device, and they meet up with Blade Knight, who is Blade Moon Knight, as we established, and then they meet up with a couple of characters from Black Widow, specifically Melina, Yelena, and Red Guardian.
I would have loved a quick catch up on Melina.
That was great to see them all together as a family, because
certainly
that, you know, it's been such a hard thing for Yelena, you know, being without family. So I was very moved to see them all together as a unit when we first saw them. So that was a real nice thing. And of course, it was tough when they ripped them all apart.
Liked that I would have wanted to see a little more of in the show was the Valley of the Broken Gods. Like, they go through this weird blown out mountain that I assume was the after effects of that fight, but we never really got an explanation. We just get Icarus and Captain Marvel fighting, and that's the sort of thing that I think like fleshes out the world other than the relatively straightforward line that the show goes on otherwise. I'd throw in there, not to jump ahead to the next episode, but like the raft run by Baron Zemo, I thought was really cool, fun idea. Just like floated around underwater, attacked by Atlanteans. That sort of thing was a lot of fun, and I'd love to have seen more of that stuff brought around the edges, so it didn't just feel like it's Kamala and the people she is losing and gathering and losing and gathering as she heads towards this inevitable confrontation. Like, that could be the line you follow, but the other stuff makes the world richer and more exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it definitely felt like, oh, I see now. Kamala is invincible, and everyone else around her is just dead over the course of this. And also, like, and this is a complaint about sort of all shows and movies like this, but like the MacGuffin-ness of the transmitter. I was like, we need a MacGuffin pocket or something. Like the idea that she's got that thing in her hand in the middle of a fight. I'm like, put it in a, I don't know, in a pocket, something.
Yeah.
But when she's just holding it and she's like, whoops, I dropped it. I'm like, don't do that. That's craziness.
Yes, totally agree with that. I also, just the whole thing with the signal, I did like, I know sorry, Pete, we're jumping all over the place. I did like that it was a feint and the Nova Corp was already there and they had quarantined the planet. I thought that was well done. But their whole obstinateness in thinking like, oh, that's what Wanda wants versus literally anything else was a little annoying to me because no, she doesn't want that and no, she doesn't want to stop that. Like, why is she giving these confusing nightmares to Kamala throughout? Focus on that weird thing that's happening rather than ignoring all evidence to the contrary.
Also, the timing of that while we're there with the Nova Corps, of them kind of being like, oh my God, hit the button. How long do you think it will take? And then the lights turn on and you're like, oh, it's them. Yeah, that was a fun, like, oh no, if they've already been there, this isn't going to go well, you know.
And another thing about the Marvel Universe that I think is just a strange idea, everyone's good with technology. Like, everyone's just like, oh, I just got to wait. Give me a second, I got to upload. I'm like, Valkyrie? How much time are you? I know, and she's, like, been in space, and so she knows how to pilot a ship, and I'm like, it's just funny that everybody's good at tech across the board.
I think it's just a shortcut, right? Like, that's all the thing is, but I agree.
I would love a moment where someone sits down and they're like, okay, what are all these buttons?
Well, they do have it, like, which button? The yellow one. Well, not that one, then the next one, you know.
Yes. And I guess they do have it with her, but it's just funny to me that anybody, like Melina, Yelena, everyone's just like, yeah, I can just, let me just download these zombies and I can run them around. I was like, okay, cool. Very nice.
Yeah. I'm going to say something controversial, getting back to the first episode that Pete's really not going to like. I'm getting a little tired of Red Guardian shtick.
Oh, fuck you. I knew you were going to say it.
I wrote this down as well.
Fuck you, man. This was so great. Having Red Guardian and Jimmy Choo getting along, like him being impressed by the magic, and that whole thing was just... I was so happy for that. And then the Red Guardian brought nothing but sunshine to this fucking project. So, I'm really upset by that. But listen, the fact that, like, Red Guardian had these, like, yes, I get to face Captain America. And then she's like, nobody's going to sing about that fight. That's just fun. That's just fun.
That fight was fun. And the torso Captain America, the comedy side of it, I felt like lowered the stakes. But, like, the visuals were just weird and interesting.
And I loved his narrating. He's like, oh, you think you can sneak up on me in the vents? And then he looks down and he's in the lower vents.
Yeah, I brought this up now because I did like we're talking about how it played out in the first episode, and I do appreciate the fight ended it with him accidentally smooshing Zombie Cap, which again I thought was a pretty fun little comedy beat at the end there. But then over the course of the episodes, it was just the constant, like, I am big, muscly Yakov Smirnov, and that's all that's going on, leading up to him eating tainted meat. Like,
I thought he was like, I ate so many fingers. I was like, oh, that's fun. And
it's funny. I liked that too. Like, it's played as a joke when he does it, and then he's fighting, and then it turns him later. I was like, it's bummer end. The part that I was with you on, Alex, is his speech that's happening on the mic. Like, he's just given that speech too many times, and it's a bit word salad to me. It's just like boilerplate Red Guardian, and I think it's because we've seen him in now 3 major projects. Sort of being the same, like, I'm pretty sad, but I like to fight. I'm happy. And it's like, okay, I just need another flavor there for him.
Yeah.
Well, I still got emotional in the episode where he was like, Yelena, no. And I was like, oh, my God, dude, this is fucking brutal. But
it was brutal. I just also thought it was strange that, like, Melina's like, okay, I'm going to leave behind and die.
Well,
and
she
then
also
Yelena does the same thing like an episode later. I'm like, what? Why? And then he doesn't do it. Which
I loved her line was like, this is a good death, because that's a running bit for her. She's like, this would be a cool way to die, or this would be a horrible way to die.
Well, hold on. You're really getting ahead of yourself, Pete. I want to talk about the second episode, if we could take a step back and stop broadly talking about the entire thing.
One last step back to
things
the
get off
Marvel
the rails. Let's reel it in, you fucker. All right.
I thought the Blade versus Ghost fight in the first episode was awesome.
Yeah, there was some great badass Blade moments. Also, some great Khonshu moments were great with Valkyrie and Khonshu.
It was great seeing him. What I loved about when Khonshu popped out is it reminded me how F. Murray Abraham was kicked off of Apple TV Plus's Mythic Quest for sexually harassing people on the set. It was just like really cool to see him again.
Alex, I hate to tell you, that was actually Khonshu. I believe that's what F. Murray's court explanation was Khonshu, if I remember correctly.
I believe he was sneezing is what happened.
Yeah.
In any case, bad guy. Not great seeing him back. Let's talk about the second episode, though, which I would say was maybe my favorite episode.
The Zombie Apocalypse Radio.
I liked how it started off with San Francisco letting loose all the PIM particles, which I thought was a really smart,
that was cool.
idea. Everything going wild, following Shang-Chi and Katie was great. I also love the move immediately following that of like Shang-Chi getting bitten, but half the ring staying on his arm to keep him there, the other half of the ring's going to Katie, which I feel like frankly gives her something to do other than help, save me. So all that stuff is great. And just the last thing I'll say is, like I said before, I thought the city on the sea, the raft, being able to move, going through the ocean, that whole thing I thought was very cool. And I would have wanted to see more of that.
But I also felt like it says a lot about their relationship that Katie and Shang-Chi can share the rings, like how close they are. It wasn't just like something to do. Like, I also think it kind of said something about their relationship, and they had that fun moment when they're like, no, we're just friends. Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, so
that was cool.
But
the dad dying, another person being like, I guess I'll just die. I'm like, what is the takeaway from this show is like, when the going gets tough, just lay down and let shit happen to you is crazy.
I just feel like the singing was fun. The kind of that's the first time we got to see kind of like those guys, and it was like, oh, this is cool. And then Zemo was fun. Holy shit, Namor was real badass. And that kind of whole like, what I'm going to do with my plan is I'm going to take the thing that they want and then I'm going to punch it into Namor's mouth because that's his safest place it can be. But yeah, then it got real gross. But it was touching when Shang-Chi was like, we're going to New Asgard. He was on board with the plan, and I thought that was a nice ending to the second episode and a kind of like nod to we're all on board with this plan.
Yeah, literally, we're on board. And we got to go under the sea, which is a fun place to explore. As we know, the underwater zombies were cool.
Do you think Disney execs are like, this is fun, but what about going under the sea?
I believe they do say under the sea pretty... I think a lot of Disney execs speak in the Sebastian accent, famously, and everyone's cool with it and encourages it. That's why the talks between Jimmy Kimmel and the Disney execs were so fun. Because they were all speaking in Sebastian language.
All right, so let's move on to the third
Hold on.
No, whoa. Slow down, Pete. We're talking about the second episode.
Oh, my God. What is the rush?
We can only move at Pete's pace. That's it. Yeah. Any other pace, unacceptable on this podcast.
Exactly. Pete has a real slow fast split that it's hard to tell which gear we're in. Pete, did you just eat a zombie finger and are slowly turning? I believe it. The only other things I wanted to say, Pete said the Namor fight was dope. This is when I wanted the MacGuffin pocket. And yes, the multiple sacrifices in this episode definitely had me thinking that this show is trying to tell us something that is almost anti-hero as its messaging.
Yeah, which is not cool.
Which is, just sort of weird.
I don't even know if there was a message there. It just felt like it was going through the paces of a zombie movie without necessarily imparting any particular theme or message. Maybe it was there, but I don't know. Two quick things that I wanted to mention about this episode, and then Pete, we can move on to the third episode. I know you don't like talking episode by episode. Apologies. There's a fun little Easter egg at the beginning when the Skrulls are chasing them. The Skrulls are trying to steal their cows, and the first appearance of the Skrulls, they were cows in Fantastic Four, so I thought that was a fun little bit. And then the other thing, I don't love how they are using Baron Zemo in the MCU. Like, I felt the same way in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where Daniel Bruhl, awesome. He doesn't provide the voice here, but I love him, like I said, being the head of the raft, the head of the society. But the way they kept switching his character back and forth made no sense to me. The fact that he's like, all right, we are going to let one of your groups on this raft, and then both of them just come on, and there doesn't seem to be any trade or really anything going on. They just come on there and it's fine. It was weird. He tries to kill them, and then immediately afterwards is just kind of palling around with them, and there seems to be no reaction from anybody. And then he's just like a sniveling fool after that. Was a real bummer as well, because he is a arch villain. He is the only person to really beat the Avengers in Captain America Civil War. I know I harp on that a lot, but that's a good level for a villain, and they keep bringing him down to this comedy level that I just do not think works for the character at all.
Yeah, and I don't know why. Why did he have to be so sort of milk toasty? You know?
I don't know. They were just kind of moving on to other things. They kill him. So, Pete, now we can move on to the other things and talk about episode 3. What happens here is we finally do loop back to the What If episode. We find out what brought us to this point. And they end up at New Asgard, which seems like its own Valhalla, but Scarlet Witch has already taken over and corrupted it. Thor has been broken by everything that's happened, but he ultimately stands up and passes the Avenger mantle onto Kamala, and then they get the Nova Corps twist that we mentioned earlier. What up, Pete?
All right, so first off, some fun D&D jokes there when they kind of finally get in. That was fun. Wizard All Day was awesome.
Do you buy that they all know D&D that well? I don't.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
When do they have time to play? Yeah. When they're taking their tech courses?
They're younger kids. They're plugged into the scene, man. They know what's going on. They know about D&D.
You just sounded so old.
Yeah. You sounded so old you like the song Lights by Journey to play during your content.
Wow, that's, I don't even know what that is. So...
That's the song in the second episode.
Okay.
I do want to mention, by the way, on that note, there was a really interesting piece on the site Pop Heist about the music in the MCU that I read recently, where they were breaking down how the music in MCU is unequivocally very old, and it really points to the audience that the MCU is aiming for. Obviously, we're old. It's aiming for us. We're doing a Marvel podcast. But it was kind of pointing to, maybe part of the reason that it has lost its relevance is they are doing musical cues that are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. And there is music that's timeless, but there's also new music, and they contrasted it with, for example, something that has resonated culturally, the Spider-Verse movies that do have a current soundtrack of songs that were specifically created for that movie by top-tier current musical artists. That kind of points to the disconnect maybe the NC is going through. So, again, it was on Pop Heist. Thought it was really interesting. It's a very long analysis of all the movies and TV shows. Check it out.
Okay, great. That's fun cool. Tangent. Anyways, back to the music. Hearing the
sorry, Pete. So sorry that I tried to enrich your life with some more information. I apologize.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to make a point. So, speaking of the music,
I was.
Yeah. Black Panther theme music really was emotional, and I was like, Marvel, don't kill Black Panther in front of me again. I can't fucking take this shit. And of course, it's this thing, but then they make it like he saved the universe, so that made it a little bit easier, but I was like, God damn it, man. Please treat T'Challa with more fucking respect.
Whoa. Hold on. I want to disagree with you there, because I thought that moment was actually really touching, because... People probably know this, but Chadwick Boseman obviously passed away.
It was one of the last things he did, yeah.
Hold on. I am talking to the podcast audience that listens to this, Pete, and I just framed it up as our listeners may not know. I know you know. I'm not always just talking to you. I'm talking to the people that are listening as well.
Pete thinks he's the main character. Yeah. And honestly, he might be.
It's possible. We might just all be rotating around Tim.
You're still talking. Get to your point, man.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm talking about Chadwick Boseman in a complimentary way. Give me some space here. Chadwick Boseman passed away rather shockingly, but he had recorded lines for the first season of What If, including the 5th episode, the Marvel Zombies episode, so he did appear there. Obviously, he was not alive to record dialogue for this, so I think what they really laudably did was leaned into that in a really poignant way, and like you're saying, Pete, let him sacrifice himself to save the entire universe. And there's a line there, I believe it's Spider-Man says, I heard T'Challa say, Wakanda forever quietly, like he knew it was the last time. And whatever else I'll say about that show, that really got me in my heart, like gave me a little twinge when I heard it. It was clearly them saying goodbye once again to Chadwick Boseman, whose legacy is definitely not forgotten. And I thought it was a really beautiful moment. And a good way of handling it.
I agree. I just, it's hard to watch him die again. Was my point. And if they would have played like audio of him saying Wakanda forever softly, I would have just started fucking bawling my eyes out. That would have been unbelievable. But yeah, the rest of the episode, yeah, so we kind of get the twist of the Scarlet Witch kind of being like, hey, listen, work with me instead of fighting me. And, we get this Thor versus Wanda battle, which was sick. Thor kind of like waking up and saving them, which was awesome. And then the You Are Avengers now was great. Yeah. You have 5 seconds to leave and then kind of ends the episode. So, yeah, kind of playing with our emotions at the end. But I'm still having a good time, and I still have hope. It just...
it's all leading up to the last episode.
Leading up to hey, listen, everyone who's died for this reason, so please just take my hand. And she has flashbacks of all of them. So I'm like, there's no way she's going to take her hand. And then she's like, well, I'm bored. I guess I'll take your hand. And I was just like, you got to be...
That was the next episode.
Yes, I really like the Thor Scarlet Witch fight as well. Like, just on a pure fan level, it was cool seeing them fight because we haven't seen that matchup in the MCU yet. And I thought it was really well executed.
Yeah.
Yes, great crackling juice. Just a lot of big energy.
Crackling juice, did you say?
Crackling juice, as in different electricities. I love you. A lot of people like
I thought you were
OJ.
talking about when you take the pork cracklings and soak them a little bit, and then you sip that up.
I love some pork juice. You might be a zombie, Alex, or close to being zombified.
I'm trying.
A lot of people like the purple stuff, OJ or Sunny D, but I like crackling juice from the back of the fridge.
As long as it's purple Saurus Rex, I'm in, bro.
But I did like all of these big. What this show did well, I think, across the board was showing like close-up fights, then also zooming way out for the wides, and that was cool in this one, especially with what we find out in the next episode as far as Thor's fate went. And Pete, I can't believe you haven't mentioned Death Dealer, a character that I thought you would like.
Fun. That was so much fun. And Jimmy having fun with Death Dealer and them being like the best of friends was such a fun bit throughout.
It was funny. It's also funny, the Death Dealer arc of being like, ooh, interesting character, silent, scary. In this episode, butt of a couple jokes. Then the last episode, murdered instantly. Bad at being a death dealer. Yeah. He was more of a death acceptor in a lot of ways.
Man.
Getting into that last episode, we basically get it all comes down to this Battle of Helm's Deep massive fight between the zombies and the remaining heroes. And I'll tell you what, I really thought they paid off a lot of stuff really nicely, particularly if you watch the What If episode immediately before this. They paid off things from the What If episode, including like the zombified enormous Hope Van Dyne, among other things.
Yeah. Upsetting.
So to your point, Justin, that you made earlier, it really is a detriment of the show that the What If episode initially came out 4 years ago, because you kind of need to have watched it to understand and appreciate what they're doing over the course of this season.
And it's strange to have it be, because they treat it like a first episode of this series, and I guess they should have either said that to us, like, watch this first. That's sort of the pilot of it. It is how the series feels, when really they just drove through as if we watched it that morning, and it left me, it left me one step behind the show, and not in a good way.
The other thing is that, like, I mean, I don't know if you can do this legally, but on streaming, you could potentially categorize it as like a 0.5 episode or a 0 issue or something like that, and have it there on the same rail. So you're like, hey, watch this first. Or alternately, there's a thing called previously ons that exist throughout television. Just have a quick recap reel beforehand. But nope, they didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't have time to do a title, you know what I mean, of an episode or a proper Marvel flip, you're not.
It's crazy what bothers you.
He really bled for it. He literally, like, his blood.
Yeah, that was an accident. That was the guy who was trying to write the titles, and he got bloody nose.
And I believe, I'm actually just reading this now, there's a great interview on Variety that I'm seeing where all of the blood is that one guy's blood. Like, none of that is animated. They just suck that guy dry.
All right, so at the top here, we have Shang-Chi giving a sweet pep talk to Kamala for some reason, who's just like gone this whole thing, and then is like, oh, I'm getting second thoughts. But we got this kind of battlefield setup, and then you got the Infinite Hulk as all the zombie kind of army is gathering, and there's just some badass battle scenes and fights and showdowns that we got here that are just absolutely fantastic. Infinite Hulk doing those like super punches was insane. We get zombie Thor versus Hulk, which was insane. Just some really kind of fun, built up this kind of battle scene and did a great job of delivering.
I thought it was interesting that they called Banner Hulk a cipher. Haven't we gotten enough of this word? Is everyone a cipher these days?
Never enough.
You love it.
When in doubt, just name him cipher.
I know. It's a cool word to say, I guess. Yes, Alex?
No, I wanted to get back to, I think this is hopefully a good time to get back to what I was saying earlier in terms of this show's place in the MCU, now that we've kind of talked through a bunch of the episodes individually. And I think this is the biggest detriment, and it's not necessarily the show's fault, but the fact that this is coming out 4 years after What If isn't the only issue in terms of timing. I think also, we mentioned this earlier, but the Blade Knight thing is weird. And it is weird because I assume they assumed by this point we would have already seen Mahershala Ali as Blade, maybe would have seen a Moon Knight Season 2. Instead, the first time we're seeing Blade in the MCU, it's Blade who also is a Moon Knight, and that's strange. Similarly,
I thought it was cool.
It was sort of cool.
It's not cool.
It's cool in the comic book way, our comic book brains. But for for someone who watches MCU but doesn't read comics, they're like, Moon Knight. Did I watch that show? Probably not. And I've even forgotten a lot of what happened there. And we watched it hard. But I'd also throw out there, like,
not
starting off with Kamala, Riri, and Kate together, I also they assumed we would have seen the Young Avengers together on screen by this point.
Yes.
Instead, this is our first time seeing them together, and they're like, hey, we're having a nice time hanging out. And I like these characters, but again, it's like...
together.
No, it's out of pace. Like, that is the thing, is it is out of sync with the rest of the MCU, and I think that is the overall problem that people have been mentioning across these phases post Endgame, and it certainly worries me a little bit leading into like Doomsday, where it's the same sort of thing where they're like, hey, our main teams are the Fantastic Four, who you've seen in one movie, and the Thunderbolts, who got together and were supposed to be a bad team. And also there's a team that Sam Wilson is leading. You don't know who they are yet. And all of these other characters who, like, same sort of thing. I'm sure they thought there was going to be a Shang-Chi sequel because Simu Liu had thought there was going to be a Shang-Chi sequel by now.
Hopefully it still happens.
I like all of this stuff. All of this stuff. But it is hard to say to a casual person who's like, yeah, I want to see a Marvel movie on a Friday night, to be like, hey, check out Marvel Zombies. All this stuff you don't know, and just jump right in. And I know comic fans are like, whoa, jump in with every issue, and that's fine, but that's not how the MCU works. And I think it's ultimately to the detriment of the show because, like I'm saying, it's forward in some places and backwards in others in terms of where we are with the MCU proper.
Okay. This
doesn't bother you at all?
Oh, well, I just, They're not in a good place for a lot of reasons, and it seems like this was rushed to get out, and not.
Well, I don't think it was though. Like they've been working on it for 4 years at this point, and
opposite of rushed.
Yeah, and I mean the other
Just
thing
shelved.
Well, I don't know if it was shelved. I don't know how long they've been working on it, but certainly I'm sure a while, and it probably was shelved for a while as well. But like, they also got to figure out the animated pace of things. Like we've talked about this a lot, but the fact that like, we don't know when an X-Men 97 season 2 is coming out. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, we don't know about that as well, though probably next year. Like if they want to have an animated output, that's fine. I like a lot of the stuff in Marvel Zombies. I like a lot of the stuff in Eyes of Wakanda. But things like this where they're like, yeah, here are 4 episodes that we're randomly dropping on a different date than we previously announced is not the way to build up a fan base for this sort of thing. That's all. It's just, this is very external to the show. It's not about the show itself, but since we've already talked about that, I feel comfortable talking about this, that like, I don't know, give me, again, like I said with Eyes of Wakanda, give me 8, 10, 12 episodes of this, give us zombie thing of the week that they're dealing with, and pace it out and let it go and explore it, rather than be like, boop, it's done, and we're never really going to talk about it again.
Well, it's just crazy. It feels like so many of these things were planned for and thought of when Marvel was at its absolute peak. Mm-hmm. But then, which makes sense, because they were in full expansion mode. Let's do everything. But then nothing was ever revisited once everything started to not go as well and they had to change their plans. They're still treating this like it's peak. And I just feel like, isn't there another step in there where they could have been like, okay, let's think about this. Maybe we do... Eyes of Wakanda becomes an animated movie and Marvel Zombies becomes an 8-episode series or something where it's like, we have to change our thinking about this. But instead they were just like, they let all the machines sort of finish their work without adjusting the output.
I think animated movie is exactly what this and Eyes of Wakanda should have been, because thinking about like, Pete, you've watched a bunch of the DC animated movies, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Like that to me feels... nothing against the people working on it, but that to me always feels like a lower key release. Like, we're putting out 4 of these of the year. We've got Under the Red Hood one. Now we've got 2 different Watchmens. Now we've got another Batman one. We got a Superman one. We're just putting them out there. And it feels like, oh, it's on HBO Max now. Let me check it out. If it was that sort of pace of like, yeah, we're putting out an Eyes of Wakanda movie, then a couple of months later, you're going to get a Marvel Zombies movie, then we're going to get this animated movie, we're going to do Kraven's Last Hunt, and then we're going to do like Infinity Gauntlet or whatever. Like not even feel so tied to the MCU, just release a bunch of Marvel animated movies like they did in that brief period where I think everybody hated them when Lionsgate was doing them back like... Right. Slightly overlapping the MCU, but like get back to that. That's the sort of thing that could totally work for this, and this particular release schedule I just don't think works.
Yeah, I agree. It just leaves us in this middle ground of like, oh, that was cool. I have a couple complaints and I wish there was more so that I could enjoy the cool parts more than getting stuck on these little hang-ups. But I mean, that's all this. I actually like this. I thought there were some great creative choices. A couple tonal things I didn't quite get on board with. I liked the ending. I think this was a success. And the fight sequences, especially in the last episode where we went from the highlighted slow-mo moments, I always loved that, and it was cool.
Worth it for the Death Dealer.
Worth it for the Death Dealer. And just to leave on a positive note, I agree with you, Justin, as well. Like I said before, the fight scenes were great. I thought the Infinite Hulk had some really cool Kirby crackle around him in the last episode. And I really like this animation style. I liked it on What If, and I like it here as well. I know, Pete, you feel iffy about it, yes?
I just had a question. Was it weird? Because like I really wanted the Hulk to do a thunderclap because that's in his powers. But I guess it's Infinite Hulk, so he can just do like thunder punches. But I don't know. I was a little torn. Is anybody else going through any of that?
Marvel Zombies too. They're saving it for that. We're gonna get the thunderclap, baby.
Thunderclap, baby.
Thunderclap, baby. Pork crackling juice. If you'd like to support this podcast and all the podcasts we do, patreon.com/Comic Book Club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about Marvel, Apple, Spotify, Android, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show. ComicBookClubLive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, stay marvelous.
Stay cracklin'. Juice.
Kirby crackle.